Hello, Coach Tony here from Coach.me, and I am doing an office hours with Dorothy Stainbrook, one of the most successful diet coaches we've ever had on the platform. And well, first of all, Dorothy, welcome, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we've come at this this interview now a couple of ways, and I used to just start by asking how you got into it. Let me start instead with the clients. How do the clients get into it? When they find you, what are they looking to accomplish?
Well, basically there's three kind of overall types of clients that come in. And the first one, I would say I call them the busy people. They're very, very busy. They tend to be tech people, professional people or people that travel a lot, or busy moms that are just going in a number of different directions. But they just don't have time they want mainly accountability. They don't have time to monitor themselves that much, and they don't have time to curate all the overwhelm of information that's out there. So that's one group, and I think they're probably, well, I don't know if they're the biggest group, but they're definitely a big group. The second group would be the type of person that has been overweight for most of their life, oftentimes pretty overweight, not just a little, and they tend to have a lot of emotional issues that go along with it, and so that's another type, and they require a lot different type of coaching than accountability coaching. And then the third type that I'm getting more and more of this last year are people that are coming primarily to keto because they hear a lot about how well it works for specific health issues, joint pain and PCOS and diabetes and that type of thing. So they're either wanting to try it out, or they've tried it and they have not been successful, and they want somebody to help them navigate it, because it's really pretty difficult.
Okay, good. And then, so then the question is, why do they come to you, and how did you become a coach? What's your background? Where does this meet? And how did even you get interested in low carb diets and then become a coach?
Yeah, I very accidentally. I have a 20-something year old son, and he's very fit. He's very athletic, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I was looking for a Christmas present for him. And Tim Ferriss, 4-Hour Body. It seemed okay. That sounds like my son. So I bought it for him for a Christmas present, and started reading it, of course, before he got home, and he never got it. And so I looked at that book. It's a huge book, but I was just mesmerized with it, primarily because I wasn't really looking to go on a diet, but it resonated with me so closly. I'm reading, I'm going, oh, you can have wine. Well, I like wine. You can have a cheat day. I could do that. And then protein. There was heavy in protein. So it just kind of, the whole thing, I just thought, well, I think I'll give this a try. And I did. And I had, most of my life, I have not been overweight, but I had been for a number of years, just aging and kids and letting things go. So that diet was very successful for me. I lost 30 pounds and I kept it off, and it's been off for 4.5 years now, or 4 years or whatever it is. And so when I get into something, I really get a little obsessive. And so Tim Ferriss then led me to, I listened to everything that he did after that, which led me to Lift, which was your program of habit change. And then Lift, when that ended in 2014, I became a coach. And so the coaching started with 4-Hour Body, Slow Carb. But as I got into coaching, I really enjoyed it much, much more than I thought I would. I was just, it was just kind of a lark for me at first. But things changed. The more clients I got, the more I realized there is not a one-size-fits-all diet. My success might work for you, it might not, but so I started really becoming what I call a problem-solving coach. I tried to hone in on their particular problem, and then I went out and did my obsessive research on it, always under the framework of what I knew about slow carb. And so that's just been a really evolving process for me. And so now I'm at the point where I feel like I have this huge framework on all of the fat loss diets and why they're different than the weight loss diets. And that's my bent now.
Oh, that's interesting. Can you tell me more about the difference there?
Yeah, and I really, really strongly believe this. The weight loss diets are basically calories in, calories out. And you can lose weight with them, but you don't necessarily lose fat, you lose weight. It's called, I mean, there's all kinds of instances about the skinny fat, you know. But they're also, Weight Watchers is a pretty typical example of a calories in, calories out. And the evidence is just overwhelming that they don't work. People don't want to be tied to calorie counting and portion control the rest of their life, so they fall off of it. They usually get their calories down so low that their metabolism might downshift, and then they gain it back right away. They just don't work for a number of reasons. Whereas fat loss includes a whole bunch of different approaches. It's not just slow carb or keto, but it's also Atkins and South Beach and the Australian one right now. There's a lot of different approaches, but it focuses on hormones, and it focuses on how they work together to do body recomposition. So you're going to lose inches rather than pounds for the most part. You'll probably lose pounds too, but it's really, really focused on hormones, and the master hormone being insulin. So it's about food choice instead of food proportions or food. It's about the choices you make. You make choices of food that does not spike blood sugar and cause an insulin response. It's that basic.
Right.
But there's a good example of this is me. I'm really geeky about measuring everything. I've weighed myself every day for 4 years. I take all the measurements. I do all of, so I have a record to look back on. And what's interesting when I look back on it is once I lost the original 30 pounds, that has not changed over the last 3 years, but the inches have continued to change. My weight has been so stable. It's like, you know, maybe a pound or two here and there if I go on vacation, but every year I lose another inch off my waist, or and so that to me is kind of an example of fat loss versus weight loss.
Right. So that's interesting. So is fasting like falling into this at all? Is that part of your world right now? Do you have a feeling on that?
I do. I think it can be really effective, but there's all kinds of fasting too.
Right.
And the 16-8 fasting is what I do, where you eat within an 8-hour window, either by skipping breakfast or skipping dinner. And that was the jump start. I lost X amount on slow carb, but then you adjust. Whatever diet you're on, you come to a stall where your body has just adjusted to it. And so I wanted to get that last 5 pounds off. So I tried keto, and then I tried intermittent fasting. And with the intermittent fasting, it came off right away. And it was easy. It might not have been easy at the beginning, but it was easy after, because I was already adapted pretty much. And so I've been doing that now for a year and a half. Now, there's extended fasting, there's fat fasting, there's water
Yeah.
fasting, all that kind of stuff. And that gets a little trickier, and that can be really useful for diabetics. But I'm not a big proponent of extended fasting unless it's for a health issue.
Sure, exactly. So if I could take it back to, you'd started by talking about three patterns of people, the busy people, the emotional long-term overweight, and how would you categorize the third category?
Well, it's usually specific health issues.
Yeah,
Um,
health issues, specific, right? So what,
energy is another one, but that's kind of overall.
right? So what are the patterns that you see work for those categories of people? Like let's take maybe long-term overweight. Uh, um, what how does that tend? What are some of the ways that they tend to work with you, and uh, you know, and what are the patterns you see as um, when they're successful?
Well, that's the hardest category because they, I mean, I'm not a counselor, and I don't go that direction. However, I do provide a non-judgmental sounding board that has been very helpful to people with emotional issues. They can reflect to me. They know they're not going to be judged about anything, and then I can take that information and use whatever tool the
Right,
fits at that time to try it out. And it's a matter of experimenting. It's a matter of firm encouragement is what I like to call it, to try to keep them, because they usually fall off the wagon and then they come back. And sometimes I'll just tell them to pause. Why don't you pause for a while, collect yourself, and then come back. And or we might have to manage stress with some types of meditation issues, or might have to manage sleep, which are also hormonal types of things that play into it. So the emotional one is tough because if it's too serious, I just refer them out.
right,
But for the most part, there's tools, and perseverance is the key with those people.
right. And then how about the busy people?
The busy people, they're actually the easiest group for me because, well, I can relate to them more. And with them, I work more on ideas. Here's some ideas for portable food that's quick and easy to make when you travel. Or I work with them on exercise programs that they can do that don't require going to the gym and spending a long time, but you can get just as effective results. Or I do a lot of curated information with busy people because they tend to want the information, and then once they start asking questions, that's when I can really help the most. They ask a question, I'll curate it, make sure I have enough evidence-based response to give them, and then oftentimes I'll send that out to everybody and
Right.
see if it resonates.
Um, these. Oh, I wanted to go back now to keto. The uh, I think people are coming to you talking about keto because keto is trendy.
Mhm.
Those diets tend to be kind of go in trends. Although, as you point out, uh, a lot of what we hear as consumers, the name diets have very similar underlying mechanics. I mean, you named 5 different fat loss ones. So, as people come to you for keto, though, what's your feeling about that diet and when to use it and when not to use it?
Um, well, this is where MyFitnessPal comes in really handy
Right.
because I will, the very first thing I like to do with people is get them on MyFitnessPal, and so that I can see where their challenges are, but I can also get a good idea of their food preferences and if they're a suitable candidate for keto. Some people like a lot of protein, and some people like a lot of fat, and don't care about the carbs that much. If I can see somebody, I have a client right now that it's really easy for him to go very, very low in carbs. So I said, well, you might want to try keto, because if it's that easy for you to be low on carbs, then you can eat all the fat that you want and need. Where it's dangerous is when people come to keto thinking, oh, I can eat bacon and cheese and everything I want because it's high fat, but they don't lower the carbs. And that's really problematic, because you don't lose weight, but it's really harmful to your health. It's a standard American diet, high carb, high fat.
Right.
And
Oh,
it's a misnomer out there that you can, and it's also a misnomer that calories don't count. Like I said earlier, I don't believe in calories in, calories out, but calories do count in slow carb, in keto, and everything. So I'll look at FitnessPal and I'll see ranges. If they're in a good calorie, unless they're really extreme calories, I don't look at that too much.
right.
But if they're like 3,000 calories, or the opposite direction, if they're 800 calories, then that's a red flag. And then I look at primarily sugar and carbs at the beginning. And MyFitnessPal is really, really helpful as a mindfulness tool for people, because they do not understand where the sugar is really. They think of sugar as table sugar, desserts, not sauces, fruit, refined grains. And once you start doing MyFitnessPal and you see how much sugar is in all of these things, sugar is the key and to inflammation and everything else.
Right. This is an aside, but we as Coach and me had done a diet study, hoping to find which is the best for weight loss, and we sent 12,000 people through this study, and in a way, the results were disappointing because all the diets performed within the same margin of error. We had a control group, so we could tell that they were all successful, but they all worked. And so when we dug into the data, the only really strong indicator we could find was had they been drinking a lot of soda beforehand. It was like all of the diets worked at some level because it took people away from the high sugar standard American diet. And it was like, I think you talk about sugar from a hormonal way, and we had validated it that way as well. Okay, Dorothy, good news. We have a question from Jolene in the one of the attendees here. Dorothy, how do you approach determining the best program and approach for each client? Do you ask the client to track on MyFitnessPal for a set period of time before you make a recommendation? I guess, when do you make that recommendation?
I do. Well, the first thing I do is send out a survey. And so I get an idea of how many diets they've tried in the past, what the challenges were, do they feel like they're sugar addicted? Do they exercise? There's a whole lot of things that are going to play into it first. If you exercise, you can eat more protein. It's all a balancing act. And then, yes, I get them on MyFitnessPal and a lot of people resist it. Not a lot. Some people resist it because it's tedious. And they don't want to think about it. But I convince them to try it for 2 weeks. And that's all you need, because I can't possibly troubleshoot unless I know what you're doing. And with something as specific as keto, I can't troubleshoot with pictures. I need to know the macros. So we'll do that for 2 weeks. And in that process, every day I'll go on and I'll check their their food diary, and I'll come back and say, okay, you were at, 57 grams of sugar. Go back up the sugar column now and see where were the culprits. Can you make a change there? Or you're either going to have to decrease the portion size if you insist on eating that much food, or you're going to have to substitute. And here's some ideas for substitutions. So then the next step for me to decide which diet is going to work for them is to see what their carb tolerance is. If their carb tolerance is, if they just can't go 2 weeks with 100 grams or less of carbs, they're not a good candidate for keto, not yet anyway. And so I try to give them guidelines to stay within and see how hard it is for them to stay within those guidelines. And then we go from there.
How much do you work within a person's preference, or how do you sort out how strongly tied they are to their preference? So someone's asking a question about how to choose from your options between low carb or slow carb or vegetarian. And I think at one level, if you don't want to make that choice, it sounds like you'll help. But I think then there's the other dynamic, which is a lot of times the clients that we send to you are starting with a very strong preference. I mean, they're specifically looking for a vegetarian coach and they see you listed, or they're specifically looking for a slow carb coach and they see you listed. How much do you work with that preference there?
Now, at the beginning, not much. So I've gotten a lot more flexible in people's preferences, both in their style of coaching and
Sure.
food preferences. And yeah, a lot of people don't like that. They like dairy, they like cheese. And Tim Ferriss says no cheese, Well, things can be nuanced. And what I've tried to do is take the best out of each diet, and what has worked the most frequently, and then fit it to their preferences. Because if you are forced to eat something you don't like, it's not sustainable. You may lose some weight, but then it's all about lifestyle. I mean, everybody's heard that so many times, but it's really, really true. You have to fit your lifestyle, and your lifestyle may change later on. But right now, if you're a cheese person, then that's fine. We'll just work on the kinds of cheese that you like, because some is better than others, and it's all about the lactose. And then that's when you start building that knowledge base. If you're a fruit person and you really like fruits, well, my kids make fun of me all the time because I just say fruit is nature's candy. And, if you want to eat fruit a lot, it's going to be a problem for you with sugar. But if you want to eat it a little, or certain, I give them a list. Here's the fruits that are the best down to the worst. Have a half cup of berries a day and call it good, and you'll be fine. A whole bunch of bananas and apples in your smoothie, you won't be fine. Right. So that's I hope that answered it. I'm not sure if it did.
No, that is, it's kind of a tightrope at the beginning of a coaching relationship as you both sides figure each other out. Hopefully, I was sort of, my question was responding to someone from the chat who was wanting to know, and I wanted, so I think you did answer that.
I will say that I do have a lot of trouble helping. I have not been that successful with vegetarians or vegans. And some of that is because I don't understand enough how to get the protein worked out. And the other problem is they do tend to eat a lot of fruit and grains. And I that's not hormonally, that's not in my wheelhouse of what makes sense hormonally.
Right.
So I do. It's not that I won't work with them, but every time I've worked with a vegetarian, they have not been successful
Right.
at, you know,
And
so
that's okay. Right. And that's,
I refer that
it's hard to say that it's okay in a way that feels good to both sides. I know I've talked to clients who are like, I hired a coach and they didn't do what I wanted. And, but it's so, to me, it's so necessary for the coaches, for all coaches to understand this is where I'm the best coach in the world. And outside of this, I could introduce you to the best coach in the world for that, but it's not going to be me. And I think in this video, I think we've gotten a really great sense of how valuable your wheelhouse is in the fat loss, the low carb hormonal area. And whenever I say a coach is good, I'm always responding to the clients that we see which clients are happy and which coaches make them happy. So Dorothy is one of the most successful coaches on our platform, honestly. So I think, Dorothy, this was perfect. I think it was a good length of a video. I think people got a chance to get to know you. I think my only question now is, if any of the people who happen to be um, listening have additional questions, or if they want to come on live and actually talk through the specifics of their situation. I haven't seen anyone say that, so I'm assuming the answer is no. But if the answer is yes, please speak up in the chat and I will try to pull you in.
sorry, I just realized that the light was shining on me, so I hope everybody got
Oh, you had an excellent halo all video.
Sorry
Don't
about
shrink. Yeah, you're the star today for this video. Okay, let's call that a day. Thank you, everyone. Dorothy, thank you so much for being here.
that. Yeah, thank
So we're right now. Uh, you often are fully booked, but after this video is over, we're going to open it up
you.
for a few more clients. And
Yeah, I can open it up for 10 more people right now. And then
oh, good.
I really don't like to get more than I can handle because it's not fair to them.
Right. Perfect. Good. I'm going to turn off the recording. Thank you so much.